Hey guys, tonight we drift way back, like chariots not wheelchairs back, into the golden sands of ancient Egypt. You're not a pharaoh. You're not even an Egyptian. You're something far more dangerous in this empire of pyramids and plagues. You're a Hebrew baby, floating in a basket, bobbing gently on the Nile, while crocodiles lurk just beneath the surface. The air is warm and heavy with the scent of papyrus reeds, and somewhere just upriver, history is holding its breath. And yeah, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and what time it is where you're listening from. I love seeing where these bedtime travels reach. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You drift silently in the soft rush of water, your basket rocking like a cradle built by desperate hands. Your mother wrapped you snugly, lined your floating crib with pitch to keep it watertight. You have no idea, but Pharaoh just ordered your death. Yep, yours specifically. His scribes are tallying Hebrew birth rates like modern census nerds, and the royal conclusion: there are too many of you, especially baby boys. So, in a horrifying bureaucratic move, the order is out: drown the infants. Your sister, Miriam, hides among the reeds, watching the tiny basket that carries you downstream. Your cries are swallowed by the buzz of dragonflies and the low gurgle of the river just a few feet away. A hippo snorts like an inflatable pool toy gone rogue, but luckily it doesn't crush your tiny ark. Downriver, the palace women are out bathing. One of them, draped in gold bangles, skin oiled with crocodile dung sunscreen, yes, that was a thing, notices the basket. She calls out, and her attendants rush over. They draw back the blanket, and you cry right on cue. Pharaoh's daughter is not stupid. She knows what this is. A Hebrew baby, no doubt, but something in her heart cracks. Maybe it's your little nose. Maybe it's divine intervention. Historians still argue whether this moment was purely emotional, political, or spiritual. But what's clear is this: she chooses to save you. And just like that, you're adopted into royalty. Your name, Moses, drawn from the water. In ancient Egyptian, Mos meant child, often paired with a god's name like Thutmose or Rameses. But you get just Moses, and it sticks. You grow up in a strange in-between world. Your food is the richest in the land. Roasted goose, honeyed cakes, lotus wine in tiny cups your tiny hands can barely hold. You learn to write in hieroglyphs and recite spells that only temple priests whisper. Your tutors are sharp and stern. One of them smells like embalming oil. But at night, when the halls are quiet, you sometimes hear a different language echoing through the servant quarters, the Hebrew tongue. Rougher, earthier, your wet nurse. A clever ruse arranged by Miriam, remember her, whispers lullabies in that language, and something in you remembers. Meanwhile, Egyptian life thunders on. Temples rise, slaves groan under sun-cracked backs. You're in two worlds at once. Pharaoh's halls and your people's cries, and every time you pass a whip crack or see a man stumble under a block of stone, something sharp stabs your chest. You grow older, stronger, more aware. You learn the names of the gods: Ara, Osiris, Anubis. You walk past statues twice your height, carved from stone harder than sleep. You watch embalming rituals that make your stomach turn. Even though your tutors say they're sacred, you carry both identities inside you, like a double helix of fate twisted tight. But hey, at least you're not still floating in a basket, right? Here's a weird little nugget you won't hear in Sunday school. There's a fringe theory that Moses might have been modeled, at least partly, on a real historical figure named Senumut, a commoner who rose to prominence under Queen Hatshepsut. He was educated, mysterious, and even helped build some major projects. Coincidence? Maybe. But historians still argue whether parts of Moses' story borrow from Egyptian biographies. As for you, little Moses, your life is about to speed up faster than a sandstorm at noon, because you can't ride 2 camels at once forever. Eventually, you're going to have to pick a side, but tonight, you're still young. The palace windows are open to the warm breeze. Papyrus mats rustle. A servant waves a fan lazily beside you. Somewhere in the distance, a Hebrew slave sings low and haunting under the weight of stones, and though you don't understand the words, your chest tightens anyway. Sleep comes easy under linen sheets and marble ceilings, but dreams whisper of rivers, of fire, of freedom not yet born. You're taller now, older, a prince technically, but not quite one of them. You wear fine linen and walk with the ease of someone raised on polished floors. But beneath the jewelry and kohl-lined eyes, something hums like a plucked string. You don't belong, not fully, not here, not anywhere. By day, you ride through the bustling streets of Pi-Rameses, nodding to soldiers and priests. The sun glints off the limestone buildings. Dust kicks up with every step of your horse. You pass markets heavy with figs, garlic, and fish that's maybe fresh. Women gossip in doorways. Children chase goats. And always, there are the workers, your people. You know it now. You've watched them build tombs and palaces, bend under bricks made without straw, and you can't unsee it. Their pain is your inheritance too, even if you sleep under painted ceilings. One afternoon, you sneak away from your palace lessons, the ones with scrolls and stiff-backed tutors who make you practice the names of gods you don't believe in. You find yourself near one of the construction yards. They're shouting. Whips crack. You spot an overseer beating a Hebrew man. Your blood, your people. The sun is a hot coin pressed against your scalp. You hesitate, then move. You step forward and something inside you snaps. You strike the Egyptian down. It's fast, blinding, final. And now you're standing over a body. Sand clings to your sandals. You glance around, no one saw. Or did they? You bury him in the sand, heart hammering, and walk away like nothing happened. But guilt is not a thing you can bury that easily. Historians still argue whether this murder was a random act or a tipping point of long-held frustration. Was it justice, or simply rage finally let loose? Either way, you've just declared yourself. Next day, you try to stop a fight between 2 Hebrews, maybe hoping for redemption, but one of them sneers, "Who made you ruler and judge? Gonna kill me like you did that Egyptian?" Yeah, time to run. You grab what you can. A cloak, a pouch of dried dates, a water skin. You slip past the gates while the sun dips low. Your royal life shrinking behind, you like the shadow of a setting obelisk. You head east toward the wilderness, into the silence, into the nothing. The desert doesn't care that you were raised in gold. Out here, the sand is your bed, and scorpions have zero respect for noble blood. You sweat, you pray, you hallucinate a little. The stars are brutal in their beauty, sharp as broken glass. And after days of wandering, dehydrated and sunburned like a cursed beach vacation, you stumble into Midian. You collapse near a well, and, plot twist, a group of sisters show up with their flock. Their sheep eye you suspiciously, but the sisters, they're nice. Then some jerk shepherds show up to chase them off, and for once, you're not the one running. You stand. You defend, because it's your thing now, protecting the powerless. The sisters rush home to tell their father, Jethro, who probably thinks, "Why is my daughter talking about some half-dead Egyptian prince?" But when he meets you, he sees something. You're invited to stay. And just like that, your life shifts again. No more gold, no more hieroglyphs. Now it's sheep and sandals, and learning how to make a fire that doesn't taste like burned lizard. You marry one of Jethro's daughters, Zipporah. She's smart, a bit sarcastic, and totally unimpressed with your palace past. You like that about her, and for the first time, maybe ever, you exhale. Your days become routine. You rise with the sun, walk the desert trails, talk to goats like they're coworkers. Honestly, they listen better than most humans. The wind sculpts the rocks into eerie shapes. Sometimes it sounds like the past whispering. Sometimes you answer it. Here's a quirky tidbit. Ancient Midianites may have worshipped a god similar to Yahweh before Moses ever returned to Egypt. Some scholars suggest that Moses didn't learn God's name from scratch at the burning bush, but maybe remembered it. Historians still argue whether Jethro was a priest of the same God Moses would later declare to Pharaoh, or if this was just one more culture Moses borrowed wisdom from. Either way, this time in the desert isn't wasted, it's foundational. The silence teaches you things the palace never could. Years pass. Your beard goes full Old Testament. Your muscles are wiry now, not polished. Your children chase each other barefoot across hot stones, and you find yourself content. You've buried the old Moses under the sands of time. Or so you think, because fate is just waiting for a bush to catch fire. You wake early. Like always, the sky is still a deep bruise of purple and blue, the kind of color you only get before the sun decides to bake everything into a crisp. You stretch, groan, throw on your worn cloak, and start rounding up your flock. Another normal day, until it absolutely isn't, because just over that next rise, yes, that one, you see it. A bush burning. Now, that in itself isn't crazy. Things catch fire in the desert. Heat, lightning. Some bored shepherd with flint and too much time. But this one, it's burning without burning up. The flames flicker, golden orange, licking the air like dancers. But the branches, still there, still leafy, still alive. You step closer, sand crunches beneath your feet. You squint, and then your name, Moses. No one's around, except the goats, and they're not great ventriloquists. Moses. You freeze. The voice is calm, heavy, like thunder politely waiting for you to respond. Take off your sandals, it says, for the place where you're standing is holy ground. You do. Of course you do. You're not trying to be smitten, smote. This is no dream. The air vibrates, your bones hum. And then the voice speaks again, not just to impress, but with a mission. I have seen the suffering of my people in Egypt. I've heard their cries. I've come down to rescue them, and I'm sending you. You blink, then laugh. Out loud, this is a joke, right? You, shepherd, fugitive, midlife crisis man in the desert. You can't even convince sheep to listen. How are you supposed to convince Pharaoh? You try to wiggle out of it. Several times, actually. What if they don't believe me? What if I stutter? Can't you just send literally anyone else? But the voice stays steady, and it gives you a name so sacred the Hebrews barely dare whisper it. I am who I am, or, depending on the translation, I will be what I will be, a name that's less about identity and more about existence, presence, timelessness. Historians still argue whether this moment marks the beginning of monotheism as we know it, or if it was a gradual evolution from ancient Semitic beliefs. But in this moment, it doesn't feel academic, it feels divine. To seal the deal, God gives you signs, miracles actually. You toss your staff, it turns into a snake. You pick it up, it's a staff again. Your hand turns leprous, then heals. Water from the Nile turns to blood. You're still terrified, but at this point, arguing with a talking bush that can do magic feels like bad etiquette. So you pack up, kiss Zipporah goodbye, sling your staff over your shoulder, and head back to Egypt. And yes, your inner monologue is full of panic, because returning to Egypt is like walking back into a storm you ran from years ago. There are memories buried in those sands, one Egyptian in particular who is really buried there. If you recall, as you approach the border, your heart pounds like a drum, but you're not alone. Aaron, your older brother, meets you. Somehow he already knows. Divine text messaging. Apparently, you hug, both of you awkward, because hugging is weird when you haven't seen each other since goat milk was your main diet. He'll be your voice, your partner in this madness. You enter the city. The air smells like fish and incense. The streets are narrower than you remember. There's a new pharaoh now. Some say it was Ramesses II. Others debate if it was a lesser-known king. Historians still argue over who held the crown when you showed up demanding a national labor strike. But whoever he is, he's not thrilled to see you. You request a private audience. The guards raise eyebrows but let you through. Royal hallways still gleam with polished stone. You remember this place, the way the light filters through the windows, the scent of crushed lotus petals. Pharaoh sits on a throne, looking half bored, half suspicious. You walk forward, raise your staff, and speak. Let my people go. There's a beat of silence, then laughter. Not from you. Pharaoh leans forward. Who is this god of yours? Cue your miracle. Staff hits the ground, snake mode activated. But Pharaoh's magicians, they do it too. Copycats, probably using smoke and mirrors or something. Still your snake eats theirs. Take that, illusionists. But Pharaoh's not impressed. He's stubborn, arrogant. He doubles the workload for the Hebrews instead. Now they have to make bricks without straw. Way to go, Moses. Back among your people. Morale is not high. They're mad at you, your name, mud. Or worse. But deep down, a shift has begun. You're not a prince anymore, not just a shepherd. You're something new, a man shaped by fire, carved by desert winds, speaking on behalf of a God who sees. And as night falls on Egypt, the Nile dark and sluggish, a whisper stirs in the reeds. Change is coming. Morning in Egypt comes with a hazy gold sun, thick with humidity, and the quiet groan of people already exhausted before breakfast. Pharaoh still says no again and again, but you're no longer surprised. His heart, as the story goes, is hardened. Whether it's by God or by sheer ego, historians still argue. Some say God did it to display his power. Others think Pharaoh sealed his own fate with good old-fashioned royal arrogance. Either way, you're not leaving empty-handed. You raise your staff, and the Nile, the lifeblood of Egypt, turns to blood. Fish float belly up, the water reeks. Even in the palace, the stink is unbearable, like a seafood buffet gone terribly wrong. But Pharaoh, still stubborn. Then come the frogs, so many frogs. In your bed, in your bread, in your hair they ribbit with vengeance, as if summoned by the god of chaos himself. Egyptians consider frogs a symbol of fertility, but you're pretty sure no one wants them breeding inside their kneading bowls. Pharaoh pleads, just a little, then changes his mind again. Next, gnats, or lice, depending on the translation, a cloud of tiny biting misery. Even the magicians tap out. This is the finger of God, they whisper, but Pharaoh shrugs, then flies. Thick black clouds that buzz like a cursed orchestra. Every window and bowl is filled with them. Egyptians cover their faces with cloth. Priests can't perform rituals because they're unclean. Still, Pharaoh says no, so you go bigger. Dead livestock, boils, hail that shatters crops and bones. Locusts that chew through every remaining green leaf like a divine paper shredder. Egypt, the empire of sun and gods, is crumbling like a poorly built sand castle. And still the answer is no. It's maddening. But you keep going. Because you're no longer asking. You're proclaiming. And then comes the 9th plague. Darkness, not just night, this is deep darkness. A suffocating, thick presence. People stumble through it, unable to see even a candle's flicker. It lasts 3 days. You wait, but Pharaoh still refuses. So, you deliver the final warning, the one no parent wants to hear. The firstborns, from the palace to the prison cells, no one is exempt unless they obey the instructions. A lamb, unblemished, sacrificed, blood painted on doorposts. A strange ritual that feels part fear, part faith. This night becomes the first Passover. It's eerie, quiet. You sit with your family, eating bitter herbs and unleavened bread, heart pounding in time with the creak of the wind. Outside something moves, an unseen shadow. A stillness falls like snow, and then cries. A wail rises across Egypt, not from one house but many. Pharaoh's own palace is not spared. The grief is raw, ancient, and terrible. He summons you in the dead of night. His voice is low, hollow. Go, he says. Take your people. Leave. Just like that, after centuries of slavery, the door is finally open. But this is not a quiet escape. This is a parade, a mass exodus. You walk through city streets under the moonlight, carrying bread dough and borrowed jewelry, herding children and goats, stepping over old fears. Some estimate you're leading hundreds of thousands. Others say it was a much smaller band. Historians still argue over the numbers, but in the moment, it feels like the entire desert is shifting underfoot. A quirky little note: the route you take is not the direct one. God leads you south, not northwest, through wilderness, away from trade roads and garrisons. Some scholars think this detour had strategic purposes, dodging Egyptian patrols. Others think it was a spiritual detour. Faith requires wandering. You move by day, and at night there's a fire in the sky, a pillar of flame, tall and unshakable. You don't fully understand it, but it's comforting, like heaven brought a flashlight. Then trouble. Behind you, the rumble of chariots. Pharaoh changed his mind. Again, shocker. You look back and see the dust cloud, 600 of Egypt's best chariots, wheels gleaming, horses thundering. Panic erupts in your camp. People cry. Sheep do that panicked bleating thing that somehow makes it worse. In front of you, the sea, big, wet, impassable. You're cornered. Why did you bring us here to die? They shout. Which, honestly, fair question. You take a deep breath, step forward, staff raised, and the sea splits like fabric ripped down the middle. Walls of water rise on either side, towering, roaring, yet somehow still. The wind howls, dry and fierce. A path opens through the chaos. Your people rush forward. You can't believe what you're seeing. Fish flickering past in watery windows, the sea muddy underfoot. Children shriek, half afraid, half thrilled. The chariots follow, because of course they do. But then, timing, always divine timing. You cross. The last foot touches dry ground, and the sea crashes shut. Wipe out. Chariots vanish, horses scream. The path becomes memory. The people collapse on the far shore, soaking wet and breathless. Then someone, maybe Miriam, starts singing a song of victory, of freedom. The rhythm catches. Drums thud, tambourines shake, and for a moment, all the fear, all the wandering, all the frogs and flies and fire, it was worth it, because you are free, really truly free. The party doesn't last long. You'd think escaping a superpower and watching the sea collapse on your enemies would buy you at least a week of good vibes. But no, a few days into the desert and your people are already complaining, loudly, dramatically. There's no water! We're gonna die of thirst! Remember Egypt. With the meat, you roll your eyes so hard it might count as a second miracle. But yeah, they're thirsty. You are too, so you walk and walk. Until finally, a glint, a pool, you rush ahead, drop to your knees, take a sip, and immediately spit it out. Bitter, salty, undrinkable, the kind of water that probably moonlights as paint stripper. The people glare at you like this is somehow your fault. You sigh, ask God, and then you're told to toss a piece of wood into the water. You do, and just like that, it's sweet. Not like soda sweet, but drinkable, life-saving. Historians still argue whether this was a natural chemical reaction or a recorded miracle. But standing in the middle of the desert, watching everyone gulp down what was once brine, you're pretty sure you know the answer. Days later, manna shows up. Literally just shows up. Fluffy, flaky stuff coating the ground every morning like divine breakfast cereal. What is it? The people ask. You laugh. Exactly. That's what manna means. What is it? It tastes like honey wafers, or maybe frosted crackers. You collect only enough for the day, except before the Sabbath when you gather double, because there won't be any tomorrow. People still try to sneak some extras. Spoiler, it goes bad overnight, real bad, like maggots, and don't open that tent bad. And when that's not enough, quail, hundreds of them fluttering into camp as if pre-roasted. God apparently runs the first food delivery service. Despite all this, the complaining never stops. You're starting to suspect that's the real plague. Now, thirst hits again. This time in Rephidim, no water in sight. The people are about to mutiny. You ask God again and are told to strike a rock, so you do, with your trusty staff. And water gushes out like someone installed ancient plumbing. Hydration secured, but the trials keep coming. Enter Amalekites. A desert tribe shows up and picks a fight. You organize your first military effort. Not exactly a seasoned army. You've got ex-slaves wielding sticks and kitchen knives. But your general, Joshua, young, strong, and very into action. He'll go far. Meanwhile, you hike up a hill, arms raised, and as long as your hands are lifted, your people win. When they drop, they start losing. So Aaron and Hur, seeing you struggle, sit you on a rock and hold your arms up for hours. Teamwork, sweat, sore shoulders, victory. Fringe theory time. Some believe this arm raising was more than symbolic, possibly an early form of battlefield signal or even proto-energy work. Others say it's just straight up obedience meets miracle mechanics. Either way, the Amalekites retreat. You win, barely. And then Jethro arrives. Your father-in-law brings Zipporah and the kids back to you. There's hugging, awkward reunions, some tears. Then Jethro observes you for a day. He watches as you personally judge every dispute, from stolen sheep to neighbor drama. From dawn until dusk. At dinner, he shakes his head. You're going to burn out. You nod politely. Internally, you're already crispy. So Jethro gives advice delegate. Set up officials over groups of 10s, 50s, 100s. Teach them the basics and let them handle the smaller stuff. You only step in for the big issues. You try it. It works. You exhale. And with a little more order, a little more water, a little less yelling, you keep moving. The desert stretches ahead, golden and silent, broken only by the wind and the occasional, "Where are we even going?" from someone in the back. You're heading toward a mountain, a big one, Mount Sinai. As you approach, something in the air changes, like static before a storm, a heaviness. You pitch camp at its base, and then God calls you up. Climbing Sinai isn't like a weekend hike. It's steep, jagged, hot, cold. The kind of climb that makes your knees ask very personal questions about your life choices. But you go, because what waits at the top isn't just a view, it's a covenant. Smoke wraps around the peak. Thunder rumbles. A trumpet blasts from nowhere. Growing louder, the mountain trembles, and you step into it. There God lays out something new, something sacred. Not just here's how not to get smote, but how to live, how to love, how to be a nation. 10 commandments carved in stone, etched by fire. No other gods, no idols. Honor your parents, keep the Sabbath. Don't lie, steal, cheat, or kill. Simple, clear, world-altering. Mainstream fact alert. These laws become foundational to Western legal systems. They've shaped entire civilizations. But while you're up there, basking in holy glow, guess what the people below are doing? Building a cow out of gold. Yes, a cow. Because when faced with divine silence, humans get weird. They dance, they drink, they worship this shiny bovine like it's going to move them into salvation. You come down, tablets in hand, only to see this cow cult in full swing. Your face, pure rage, you smash the tablets. Gold Cowgate goes down in history as one of your people's lowest moments. There's yelling, there's plague, there's deep regret. But also forgiveness. You climb back up. Again, this time God tells you to carve new tablets yourself. Slightly less dramatic, more DIY, and slowly, painfully, the people begin to learn. They build a tabernacle, a mobile sanctuary. They craft it carefully with gold, fabric, and wood. Every thread symbolic, every item designed for holy presence. And now, when you enter the tent of meeting, something strange happens. Your face glows, literally, like sun on water bright, so much that people ask you to wear a veil. It's weird. But hey, at least they're not worshipping livestock anymore. Wilderness time stretches. Days blur into months, months into years. You're still leading, still walking, still dealing with everything from food complaints to sandal disputes. Turns out, freedom is a lot less glamorous when it comes with sand in your socks every single day. You thought this was going to be a quick trip, leave Egypt, head to the promised land, unpack. But nope, the direct route is off the table. Instead, you're on a kind of divine detour. A really, really long one. And here's the thing, the people don't stop grumbling. Even after Sinai, even after the 10 Commandments, even after water from rocks and food from the sky, they miss Egypt. The place where they were slaves. But memories funny like that. Scarcity makes even change seem nostalgic. God keeps guiding, with cloud by day and fire by night, but they keep testing the limits. It's like a cosmic version of, are we there yet? Now comes the moment you've been aiming for, the edge of the promised land. You send 12 spies, one from each tribe, to scout it out. They're gone for 40 days. When they come back, they all agree on one thing. The land is amazing. Giant grapes, flowing milk, the works. But 10 of them, terrified. The people are huge, giants! We looked like grasshoppers. Only 2, Joshua and Caleb, say, we got this. The crowd sides with the fearful ones, and God, not thrilled. So, consequence time. Because of their doubt, the entire generation, everyone over 20, will wander for 40 years until they've passed away. Only their children will enter the land. Harsh, maybe. But remember, these are the same people who wanted to go back to Egypt every time things got hard. Quirky tidbit. Some scholars point out that 40 years is about the time it takes for a generation to fully turn over in ancient societies. Whether symbolic or literal, it's enough time to reset the culture. Now you're officially in limbo. The next few years are rough. Leadership is exhausting. You play mediator, therapist, weatherman, and occasionally divine fire extinguisher. There's the time Korah leads a rebellion. He and 250 men challenge your authority, saying, hey, why do you get to be special? Long story short, the earth literally opens up and swallows them. Even you didn't see that one coming. Then there's the bronze snake episode. People complain again and are bitten by venomous snakes. You pray. God tells you to make a bronze serpent and lift it up on a pole. Whoever looks at it, lives. It sounds strange, almost mystical, but it works. Historians and theologians still debate the symbolism. Some say it prefigures spiritual healing. Others think it mirrors Egyptian protective symbols. Either way, it's one of the most unexpected moments in your career. Let's talk about the water incident. It's hot. Everyone's parched. Again, God tells you to speak to a rock this time, but instead you hit it twice. Water still gushes out, but you've crossed a line. God pulls you aside, quietly, gently, and says, you won't enter the promised land. Wait, what? All this time, all this wandering, all this leading, and now this. It's hard to hear, but deep down, maybe you understand. You weren't just disobedient. You acted out of frustration, not faith. You made it about you. Still, it hurts. A lot. You try to move on. You watch the next generation grow up. They're different, less attached to Egypt, more used to tents and dust and sky. But the old habits linger. Remember Balaam? That prophet hired by a Moabite king to curse your people. God flips the script. Every time he tries to curse, a blessing comes out instead. But the real star of that story, his donkey, the donkey sees an angel in the road and refuses to go forward. Balaam beats it, and then the donkey talks. Yes, full on sass and everything. If I've been your ride this long, shouldn't you trust me? It's both hilarious and humbling. Sometimes even a stubborn mule has more spiritual sense than a human. Eventually, the old generation fades, your siblings too. Miriam dies first, then Aaron, your brother and right hand. You climb a mountain with him for the last time, watch his priestly robes pass to his son, and say goodbye. You're feeling the weight now. Age, grief, consequence. You climb a different mountain, Mount Nebo. From there, you get one final gift, a panoramic view of the promised land, lush hills, rivers, olive trees. It's real, it's beautiful, it's right there. But you won't enter. You stand quietly. Maybe you smile, maybe you cry. You've come so far, led so long, and now this is where your journey ends. You write your final words, your reflections, warnings, hopes, in what becomes the book of Deuteronomy, a farewell speech etched in fire and dust. Mainstream historical note. Some scholars believe parts of Deuteronomy were written or compiled later, reflecting later reforms. Others believe you penned it yourself. Near the end, historians still argue over authorship, but the voice remains deeply personal. As for your death, it's quiet, alone but not lonely. You're buried in an unknown grave. Not because you were forgotten, but because the story wasn't about you. It was always bigger. You led, you failed, you listened, you argued, you loved your people even when they drove you up the tent walls. And now it's time for Joshua to lead. You rest, dust returns to dust. But your story, it echoes. In laws, in legends, in bedtime whispers across centuries. You're gone now, but we're not done. Not really. Because what you left behind keeps marching forward. Joshua steps up, sandals firmly planted where yours once stood. He's younger, sharper with a sword than with a speech, but faithful to the call. And the people, they're different too, hardened by the desert, molded by manna, no longer slaves, but citizens of a promise. As they prepare to enter the land, they carry something sacred, the Ark of the Covenant. Inside, those stone tablets, the new ones you carved, the commandments etched by divine fire and your own weathered hands. It's more than a box. It's a symbol of everything you went through, of what it cost to learn how to trust. First challenge the Jordan River, flooded, rushing, not exactly a walk through, but God tells them to march the ark straight into the water, brave, slightly unhinged. Yes, and yet, miracle. As the priests step in, the river parts, dry ground appears. Sound familiar? You'd probably chuckle from Mount Nebo if you could see it. Once across, they build a memorial. 12 stones, one for each tribe, pulled from the riverbed, because people forget fast, and sometimes they need rocks to remind them. Then comes Jericho walled, intimidating, impenetrable, but instead of siege engines and battering rams, God gives marching orders. Literally, for 6 days they circle the city once a day in silence. On the 7th, they circle 7 times, blow trumpets, and shout, boom. Walls crumble like stale crackers. The city falls without a single sword swing. Historians still debate the timeline and whether this aligns with archaeological layers at Jericho. Some layers suggest collapse, others don't. But the story remains a pillar of faith and strategy through obedience. And the conquest continues, slow, gritty, filled with battles and treaties and some very questionable decisions. Meanwhile, the ark becomes more than a symbol. It's dangerous in the best and worst ways. Handle it carelessly and bad things happen. Just ask Uzzah, who tries to steady it during transport centuries later and doesn't survive the touch. It's kept in the tabernacle, a portable tent of meeting built under your instructions, every detail precise. Acacia wood, gold overlays, curtain upon curtain, holy of holies, hidden deep within. Quirky details, some fringe theories suggest the ark functioned like an ancient capacitor, storing and discharging energy. Basically the Old Testament's Tesla coil. Others roll their eyes and say, no, it was just holy, back to the people, with the land slowly claimed, the tribes spread out. Each gets their portion. Some grumble, some flourish. But the central thread remains. They are no longer wanderers. They are rooted. Yet even with a home, trouble brews. Because, plot twist, they forget. Fast, they forget your words, the commandments, the burning bush, the man of the miracles. And when memory fades, chaos moves in, which brings us to the era of judges. Think tribal leaders meet, stand in prophets. They rule during dark, uncertain times when everyone did what was right in their own eyes. So a mess. Deborah rises, wise, bold, poetic. Gideon gets drafted by an angel while hiding in a wine press. Samson is all hair, strength, and terrible girlfriend choices. It's a chaotic period, full of lessons your ghost would probably shout from the heavens if it could. We've been over this. But every time things fall apart, someone rises up temporarily. The cycle continues: rebellion, oppression, repentance, rescue, repeat, and slowly, very slowly, the people start to crave something more permanent. A king, a human leader to unify them, to stand in your place. You wouldn't be surprised. You saw the need long ago, but it's bittersweet. Eventually Saul is crowned. He's tall, impressive, and ultimately not great at following instructions. Then David, the shepherd, the slingshot kid. You'd probably like him. Flawed, poetic, passionate, someone who dances in the streets and writes songs to God in caves. He unifies the tribes and dreams of building a temple, a permanent home for the ark. That dream is fulfilled by his son Solomon, who erects a glorious temple in Jerusalem. No more tent, no more wandering. Your tabernacle evolves into stone and cedar, gold and incense. The ark is placed in the Holy of Holies, beneath golden cherubim. The cloud of presence returns, and yet again the people forget. Fast forward. Kingdom split, exile comes, the ark disappears, lost to time, conquest, or perhaps hidden in some cave or vault. Historians still argue about its fate. Some suggest it was taken by Babylon, others believe it lies buried beneath Jerusalem, or even carried to Ethiopia. Fringe tales say it emits divine radiation, or was spirited away by angels. All that remains are echoes, and yet your legacy endures. Your laws are copied, studied, interpreted. Your journey becomes the backbone of Judaism and later a guiding light in Christianity and Islam. Even skeptics recognize your story's impact on ethics, law, literature, even film. Charlton Heston voice not included. In synagogues and churches, in deserts and city streets, people still speak your name. Moses, drawn from water. Raised in a palace, humbled in a wilderness, face glowing with divine reflection. Not perfect, not always patient, but faithful, brave, chosen. And your people, they carry your memory, your mission, your mistakes. You taught them how to live with the unseen, how to follow a voice in fire and cloud, how to wrestle with divine expectations without giving up in the heat. The desert wasn't a detour, it was the point. Because out there, stripped of everything, they had no choice but to learn how to listen, to grow, to trust. And you were their guide, their flawed, fiery, frustrated guide, but you showed up every day, even when you didn't get to see the end, even when you knew you'd be forgotten by most, but remembered by the faithful, even when all you had left was dust, staff, and a whisper, and still your name lives. You'd think after all that, deserts, plagues, talking bushes, parted seas, the story would coast to a gentle end. But history rarely rides off quietly. Centuries pass, your bones rest somewhere no one can find. Your legacy, though, it starts to evolve, shift, multiply. In Jewish tradition, your name becomes nearly synonymous with Torah, the first 5 books, The law, not just commandments, but the very architecture of their worldview. Every scroll kissed and rolled and recited. That's your echo. Schools pop up to study your words. Debates rage about purity, Sabbath sacrifices, not out of boredom but reverence. Even small commandments, like not mixing fabrics or boiling goats in milk, each one taken seriously, as if God whispered them freshly yesterday. Modern readers might call some rules obscure or culturally dated, but your people know their anchors, ways to remember, ways to stay holy. Then, somewhere in the dusty hills of Galilee, a new voice rises. He's a carpenter's son. He speaks in riddles, hangs out with fishermen and tax collectors. He climbs mountains just like you did. And there, he delivers what becomes known as the Sermon on the Mount. Sound familiar? He quotes you, reinterprets the commandments not as rules but as heart conditions. You've heard it said, he begins, but I tell you, people listen. And here's the twist, he's not tearing down what you built. He's fulfilling it. That's what he says, anyway. I did not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. Historians still debate how much of his teaching diverges from yours, or simply evolves the same themes. Some see a rupture, others see a handoff. Either way, you're inseparable from his message, from his identity. At the Transfiguration, this surreal mountaintop moment, you show up alongside Elijah, shimmering, silent, watching. You're back in the desert again, only now it's cosmic, and even in the Quran, your name appears, Musa, revered prophet, voice of God. You're not just a Hebrew hero anymore. You're a bridge across faiths, continents, centuries. Quirky bit in Islamic tradition. You're often depicted as someone who asks lots of questions, curious, bold, slightly stubborn. Which tracks? As centuries roll on, you become more than a man. You become metaphor. Artists paint you, often with horns, yes, horns. Think a translation mix up in Latin where rays of light became horns. Michelangelo sculpts you like a granite bodybuilder with a heavenly headache. People interpret you 1,000 ways, revolutionary, mystic, judge, liberator. Some scholars say you were invented later to unify scattered tribal traditions. Others argue you were absolutely historical, just hard to pin down. Historians still argue whether there was a single Moses, a composite, or a mythologized leader inspired by someone real. The lack of Egyptian records is cited, but then again, ancient regimes rarely documented embarrassing slave uprisings. Regardless of what anyone believes about the details, the effect of your story is undeniable. Your narrative reshapes civilizations. America's founders quote you. Civil rights leaders invoke you. Harriet Tubman called herself Moses as she led people to freedom along the Underground Railroad. You're in books, movies, bedtime stories, and you're not just confined to religious spaces. You show up in psychology, politics, sociology. You're the archetype of the reluctant leader, the imposter syndrome champion, the one who says, send someone else, and ends up front and center anyway. Still carrying that staff, the desert, still relevant, because it turns out modern life is kind of a desert too. Busy, dry, overstimulated. People still get lost, still forget, still grumble, and your story gives them a map. It reminds them that transformation doesn't happen in palaces. It happens in the heat, the waiting, the silence between miracles. You're also a warning. You had everything going for you, miracles, face, time with God, the best testimonials in human history, and still messed up at the rock. People need that reminder too. That leadership is hard, that faith is fragile, that you can be deeply spiritual and deeply human all at once. And maybe that's why your story endures, not because you were perfect, but because you weren't. You got angry, you doubted, you broke stuff, and yet God kept using you. That's the kind of story people cling to when they feel unqualified, when they're staring down a giant sea of uncertainty with nothing but a stick and a prayer. Your name becomes shorthand for miracles, sure, but also for endurance, for doing the hard thing again and again, even when it doesn't pay off the way you hoped. Back to the scrolls. Your law continues to evolve, interpreted, expanded, lived. The rabbis developed the Mishnah, then the Talmud, a sprawling conversation across centuries, each layer interacting with your words, not frozen in time, but alive, dissected like a living thing. Even in modern Israel, the name Moshe holds power. So, does the Exodus? It's cited in independent speeches, on currency, in courtroom arguments. It's less a story, more a compass. Same in the Black Church, where "Let my people go" rings out in songs, sermons, protests. The Pharaoh might change, but the cry stays the same. You gave the world its first escape narrative. And people are still telling it, living it, believing that liberation is always possible, even if it takes a few plagues to get there. And all of it, from reeds to rivers, tablets to tents, starts with you. A baby in a basket, a man who stutters, a fire that didn't burn out. You never reached the destination, but you shaped the road. Time keeps flowing like the Nile you once drifted on, sometimes gentle, sometimes treacherous. And though your feet no longer press the earth, Moses, your shadow lingers in the dust. The story of your life doesn't fade, it ripples across scrolls, across centuries, through cultures you never dreamed of. You didn't just influence religion, you shaped the language of longing, of law, of liberation. Your commandments, they became the moral spine of whole civilizations, engraved on courthouse walls, whispered in classrooms, turned into phrases parents use to guilt kids everywhere. Honor your father and mother rings through minivans even now. Your staff might be gone, no museum has it, no archaeologist's trowel has brushed against its tip, but its legacy endures in every person who ever dared to believe they could part the chaos of life with just a shred of faith and a trembling hand. And you, imperfect, temperamental, often overwhelmed, you showed them how. Still, there's something quiet that never quite gets enough attention. The waiting. 40 years is not a sprint. It's a lifetime of circling the same wilderness, waking up to sand in your eyes and the same flat manna on your tongue, and through it all, you learned the hardest truths, not from burning bushes or booming voices, but from silence, from discipline, from walking. You taught us that the miracle isn't the Red Sea moment. It's waking up each day and choosing to lead, even when you're not sure where the next step goes, even when your sandals are worn through, even when the promised land stays out of reach. Remember the Mount of Transfiguration. Centuries after you died, you showed up again, briefly, next to Elijah and Jesus, standing in the light. Silent, yes, but present, still part of the story. You were never erased. You were never just the past. You're the whisper that tells people, yes, this path is hard, yes, it's long, but if you walk it, if you wrestle with it, it changes everything. So tonight, as someone drifts off to sleep, lulled by the hum of their fan and the warmth of their blanket, your voice travels just beneath the silence. It reminds them that even in the desert, purpose exists. Even in failure, grace still follows. Even if you don't see the end, you are part of something bigger. You are not forgotten, and you never will be. So now you rest, not in the wilderness or among ancient stones, but in the stillness of this room. The journey's been long, sand beneath your feet, stars above your head, fire by night, cloud by day, and all of it has led here. Let your breath soften, like wind drifting gently through reeds on the riverbank. Feel your shoulders loosen, the weight of those stone tablets finally lifted. You've crossed deserts of doubt, climbed mountains of meaning, and stood in the presence of the divine. And now it's time to be still. Let the dust settle. Let the echo of old trumpets fade into quiet hums, like lullabies remembered from childhood. You are safe. You are seen. And even in the waiting, even in the not, yet there is beauty. Take one last deep breath, in through your nose, out through your mouth. Whatever you carry tonight, let it go. The road can wait until morning. For now, let the rhythm of your heart beat slow, sensing with ancient footsteps on sacred ground. Let sleep find you gently, like manna falling at dawn. And as dreams begin to swirl, maybe you'll walk once more among those sun-warmed stones. Maybe you'll find yourself by the burning bush again, not for duty, but for peace. You've wandered enough, you've done well. Now rest, traveler. Sleep deeply, sweet dreams.